sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the land. A gentle rustle in the wind carried whispers of unease through the fields, where golden wheat swayed like ocean waves. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind that belied the storm brewing just beyond the tree line. Jacob, a farmer known for his grit and determination, knelt in the dirt. His weathered hands tenderly worked the soil, shaping it with care. He felt the pulse of the earth beneath him, a bond stronger than any threat. But something in the air felt different today. It was a tension that vibrated through his bones, an unnerving premonition that he could not shake. Then, in an instant, the calm shattered. A distant rumble grew louder, drawing closer. Jacob lifted his head, shielding his eyes from the sun. A cloud of dust rose on the horizon, ribbons of tan spiraling into the blue. Heart pounding, he squinted against the glare, and that's when he saw them. A band of figures, silhouetted against the fading sunlight, thundering toward him on horseback. Panic surged through him like wildfire. Bandits. The very whisper of the word sent chills racing up his spine. Stories of raiders, ruthless and merciless, had floated through town like storm clouds threatening rain. Jacob had heard the tales of fear, families torn apart, livelihoods shattered. Yet he never thought they would come for him. As the riders approached, the ground beneath him trembled, each hoofbeat echoing with a grim finality. He could see their expressions, fierce and unyielding, eyes glinting with malice. Jacob straightened, feeling the weight of his tools in his hands. Could he run? No, that option was a coward's path. He had worked too hard, built too much to let fear dictate his choices. The lead rider, a man with a scar running across his cheek, dismounted with a swagger that screamed dominance. The dust settled, revealing a group of men who could only be described as predatory, dressed in ragged clothes and armed with weapons that glinted ominously. They were here for more than just a scare. They came to take. The scarred man growled. His voice was gravelly, carrying an edge sharper than the blade at his side. "Jacob," he replied, meeting the man's gaze unflinchingly. The bandit smirked, revealing yellow teeth. "We want what you have." He waved one hand, a sweeping motion that was more insult than claim. Jacob glanced around, his heart racing. The wheat that danced in the wind was more than just food. It was hope, survival, generations of toil etched into each golden stalk. "You can't take this from me," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "This land feeds my family." Laughter erupted from the bandits, a sinister chorus that filled the air with dread. They circled Jacob, eyes scanning his frame, sizing him up. Each one seemed to relish the idea of breaking him, of bending his will. But Jacob stood firm, back straight, fists clenched tight around his tools. "Brave words for a lone farmer," the lead bandit sneered. A moment hung thick in the air, the world around them fading into silence as if nature herself paused in anticipation. Jacob could feel the weight of their gazes, sharp like knives. Panic gnawed at his insides, but beneath it lay a wellspring of defiance. He could not bend. He would not break. Jacob challenged, an ember of courage sparking within him. A flash of surprise crossed the scarred man's face, quickly masked by anger. Jacob's voice was low but firm, anchoring him to the earth beneath his feet. "I've watched the storms come and go, and I'm still standing. I've buried loved ones, faced loss, and come out breathing." The bandit scoffed, but Jacob saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The other men shifted uncomfortably, glancing at their leader. For a moment they hesitated, caught off guard by the farmer's resolve. Taking advantage of this fleeting moment, Jacob took another brave step, his heart roaring like a drum. "Take what you want," he said, voice stronger now, "but know that it will not come easily." The lead bandit sneered, but there was a crack in his bravado. He spat. "Not my fields," Jacob said, his voice steady. In the split second of exchange, Jacob's essence became a loud battle cry in the gathering twilight. With each passing moment, he felt the vibrations of the world around him growing stronger. He grasped his tools like weapons, his fears transforming into fiery hope. He had lived his whole life preparing for this moment, each beat of his heart reinforcing his strength. A whisper of wind danced through the grass, carrying the scent of the earth mixed with courage. Maybe it was the stubbornness of a farmer, or perhaps the fury of a protector, but Jacob knew one thing for certain. He'd rather die standing than live on his knees. With newfound conviction, Jacob took a deep breath. "Here's the truth," he said, voice ringing out with clarity. "When you threaten one farmer, you threaten all of us. I won't be the last to stand with my crops." I've seen neighbors rally in times of need, mothers, fathers, families ready to protect what is theirs. You enter here, it won't be just me you face. He looked to the horizon, seeing the silhouettes of trees, the distant outlines of homes. You'll have to face every soul that lives off this land, every person who knows the sweet smell of wheat and the struggle of a hard day's work. A moment passed, the bandit's arrogance faltering, as his gaze flickered toward the encroaching shadows cast by the setting sun. The air changed, crackling with palpable tension, as if the earth itself held its breath. Suddenly, like a rising tide, the voices of other farmers could be heard in the distance. He could see figures gathering, drawn by Jacob's call, emerging from the fields and valleys, their hearts as fierce as his. Each one was armed with pitchforks, rakes, anything they could find. A collective heartbeat resonated, echoing the surge of determination. The scarred man's bravado started to fade. He stammered, words tumbling from his mouth in disbelief. Jacob smiled, a fierce, confident grin. "Not think." The gathering villagers roared in response, their voices carrying a tone of unity and strength that struck fear into the hearts of the bandits. One by one, the farmers stepped forward, positioning themselves behind Jacob like a wall of resolve. "Your time here is done," Jacob said, voice ringing clear. "Leave our land. Leave us to tend to what is ours." The lead bandit's arrogance wavered, and an unsettling hiss escaped his lips. "No," Jacob replied, the fire within him undiminished. With that, the bandits began to retreat, mystified by the transformation they had sparked. Each step backwards felt more like a retreat into shadows, the looming presence of community growing stronger. The air buzzed with energy, and the fading sunlight bathed them in golden hues, as if nature celebrated their triumph. As the bandits disappeared over the horizon, Jacob turned to his fellow farmers, their faces filled with pride and determination. They had stood together, forging a bond that couldn't be broken. There would be challenges ahead, but they had weathered the storm, and now they knew fear could never overshadow courage. The sun dipped behind the hills, casting hues of orange and purple across the sky. Jacob took a deep breath, the soil beneath his hands a reminder of everything he held dear. This land would always fight back against those who sought to take it without regard. Today, he had not just defended his crops, he had ignited a fire of resilience in the hearts of many. Together, they turned back to their work, a newfound resolve pulsing through their veins. A quiet promise resonated in their souls. As long as they stood united, no threat could extinguish their light. Today, Jacob had shown not only the power of a farmer, but also the enduring strength of a courageous heart standing firm against the tempest. As the stars twinkled above and the moon bathed the land in silver light, there was a sense of peace among them, a whisper of hope that would carry through the darkest nights. It was a reminder that sometimes the most formidable battles are won not in the silence of fear, but in the loud chorus of unwavering unity. The sun hung low, its fierce orange glow casting long shadows across the fields. In the distance, the sound of a galloping herd echoed, but this was no ordinary herd. It was the sound of chaos approaching, a sound that sent shivers down the spine of every creature that inhabited the land. Farmers bent low in the fields felt the prickle of unease wash over them, a gut feeling that something was terribly wrong. All eyes turned toward the horizon, where dust clouds soared, and a line of dark figures emerged, riding hard with menace in their wake. In the heart of those fields stood Thomas, a farmer with hands calloused from years of labor and a heart fierce as a lion's. His plot of land was his life, his family's legacy interwoven with each blade of grass, each blooming fruit. For years he toiled beneath the sun, planting seeds and nurturing dreams. And now those dreams were under threat. As the riders approached, determination rippled through his veins. Thomas stood tall, both anxious and resolute. The unfamiliar tension in the air felt as heavy as the night before a storm, crackling with a dormant energy that could only be unleashed with the coming conflict. There was a time when fear would have clenched his heart, a time when he might have turned away, but not today. Today, his heart beat in sync with the land he loved. The lead bandit, a man with a scar running across his cheek and a sneer etched into his face, dismounted with a showy confidence that reeked of arrogance. The other men followed suit, fanning out like vultures ready to descend. They wore shabby clothes, dull and dirty, but their eyes gleamed with the thrill of power. The scarred man growled, his voice dripping with disdain. "Thomas," he replied, standing firm, grounding himself as memories flickered in his mind, years spent planting, harvesting, learning, and fighting to keep his family's legacy alive. Thomas felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The bandit waved a hand at the fields, his expression filled with contempt. "These crops, this land. We've heard enough tales of farmers getting rich while we're starving." Around Thomas, the air thickened with tension. His heart raced, pulsing to the rhythm of fear and anger. He wanted to run, to flee and save his family from the impending doom of these raiders. But deep down, far beyond the instinct to survive, he felt a fire igniting. He could not just stand by and watch. "No," he said, voice steady, resonating with newfound strength. "These crops do not belong to you. This land is my family's." The bandits exchanged glances of disbelief. Laughter erupted, cruel and mocking. The scarred leader stepped closer, looming over Thomas. "You think you can fight us? We're not some simple thieves. We've taken more than just fields." Thomas's resolve tempered like steel forged in fire. "I'm not afraid of you or what you've taken. I've seen the fear in your eyes. I know your kind." "Stand down, farmer," the bandit spat. With a steady hand, Thomas pointed the pitchfork in his grip toward the heavens like a beacon of defiance. "Maybe not. But I do know this land, and I know myself. I will not cower, I will not hide." The bandit hesitated, his bravado wavering just momentarily. Around them, the grass whispered secrets in the undulating wind, a chorus urging Thomas on, filling him with an unwavering courage. He could feel the sweat trickling down his back, but it wasn't fear. It was the transformative rush of standing firm in the face of adversity. "Gather your men," he called to the other farmers nearby. They blinked, startled at first, but as they began to hear his conviction, something stirred within them. One by one, they emerged from shadows, stepping forward into the light. A collective force began to swell, voices rising in unity against the impending storm. The bandits, suddenly outnumbered, exchanged cautious glances. Thomas stood tall at the forefront, powerful in his defiance. "This is not just about me or my crops. It's about all of us who labor under the sun. It's about dignity." Seeing the shift in morale among the farmers, doubt crept into the lead bandit's eyes. He barked, forcing a laugh that evacuated any trace of real confidence. "They will fight because we stand together. There's strength in unity. You may think it easy to bully one farmer, but you will find a wall born of countless strands is hard to break," Thomas replied, his voice shaking the very air around them. In that moment, the distant horizon rumbled with the echoes of their ancestors, the sweat of hard work, the laughter of children, and the pain of loss. All of it mingled in the air, binding them to this land. With every word that left Thomas's lips, they could feel the strength of their collective history, how long they'd fought for these fields, how much they had to lose. Around him, the farmers began to raise their tools, pitchforks pointed defiantly at their enemies, eyes blazing with purpose. Thomas felt the thrill of that unity wash over him like the warm sun spilling across the fields he fought for. A sense of wonder enveloped him, a realization that they believed in something greater than themselves, something impossible to extinguish. The scarred man's confidence cracked further, his sneer faltering. "You're making a mistake, farmer." Thomas smiled, shaking his head slightly. The bandits shifted nervously, the fierce unity of Thomas and his fellow farmers sapping their power. Each farmer surrounded Thomas, an invisible web stretched taut among them, transforming the crowd into a collective heartbeat of courage. And then, as if summoned by the very air around them, a thunderous sound echoed from the distance. More farmers had arrived, drawn by the commotion. Like a wave crashing over the shore, they emerged, faces grim yet determined. Family after family stepped forward, armed with a passion so deep it could not be taken. The bandits, once proud, began to back away, unsure now of their ability to intimidate. Fear crept into their expressions as they realized they were overwhelmed, outnumbered by those who knew the land, who felt the passion coursing through the roots of their ancestors. Thomas raised his pitchfork high once again, rallying his people. It was a moment of revelation. They were not just farmers, they were guardians of hope and defiance standing up to oppression. The whispers of his ancestors resonated in the air, urging him forward. "You've underestimated us," Thomas said, voice steady, low but powerful. "You think you can take what doesn't belong to you without consequence, but we will not let you." The scarred man stood frozen. In his heart, shadows began to break apart under the rising tide of bravery. Each farmhand held tools that became extensions of their spirit: pitchforks, shovels, even their bare hands. This was more than a field. It was a foundation upon which futures were built. As the bandits turned to leave, Thomas took a step forward, not with anger but with a sense of triumph. "You have a choice," he said, voice echoing in the stillness. "You can take this moment and leave with your lives, or you can push forward and face the wrath of what you've threatened." Whispers of the crowd surrounded them, a symphony of bravery unyielding. The bandits glanced at one another, weighing their options. The unity of the farmers was a force that could not be underestimated, a raw, electric energy palpable in the air. Finally, with reluctant movements, the bandits mounted their horses and retreated, their arrogance dwindling as they melted into the gathering dusk. The sense of victory erupted in cheers, voices rising like flames, the power of their resolve ringing clear. Thomas turned to his fellow farmers, feeling the weight of their shared experience uniting them in a way that would forever bond them together. They had faced fear and emerged victorious, their spirits alive with hope and courage. Together, they moved back toward the fields, laughter mingling with the soothing sun setting behind them. An unbreakable bond was forged that day, a lesson in resilience, an understanding that standing firm could transform fear into power and division into unity. As the stars twinkled above, they returned to their work, knowing the battle had not just been won in the fields but also within each heart. Their fields would flourish, nourished by the fierce spirit embedded in the roots, a testament that they would always stand firm against whatever threat may come. No bandit, no shadow of fear could take away that profound connection to the earth, nor extinguish the hope that burned brightly among them. They were not just farmers, they were a family, and in their resolve lay the heartbeat of a legacy that would never be silenced. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm, golden hue over the sprawling fields. Thomas stood alone, his hands buried deep in the rich earth, feeling the pulse of the land beneath him. It was a typical day for the farmer, fragrant with the smell of freshly turned soil, the gentle buzz of bees, and the soft rustling of leaves in the late afternoon breeze. But something felt amiss. In the distance, he heard a rumble, a sound that grew louder, more threatening as it approached. He wiped the sweat from his brow and turned toward the noise, squinting against the fading light. And then he saw them. Shadows, dark figures against the horizon, barreling toward him on horseback bandits. He realized, his heart racing. The stories of rogue groups sweeping through villages had circulated among farmers for months. Tales of homes burned, families torn apart, and livelihoods stolen echoed in his mind. But he was a farmer, not a coward. This land was his legacy, and he would not let it be taken away. As the riders drew nearer, Thomas felt the ground beneath him tremble. His heart pounded with equal parts fear and sheer determination. He had faced storms and droughts, understood the weight of hard labor and the rewards of perseverance. He could not let these brigands challenge everything he had worked for. The lead rider dismounted with a swagger that spoke of control, confidence radiating from him like a dark shroud. His eyes gleamed with a feral intensity, and a scar traced its way across his cheek, a shadow of pain that seemed to enhance his menace. The other bandits followed, circling Thomas like wolves eyeing prey. The scarred man growled, surveying the land as if it were his to claim. "Thomas," he replied, voice steady despite the racing rhythm of his heart. He squared his shoulders, grounding himself in the soil he cherished. The bandit scoffed, his laughter harsh and grating. "We want what is ours." He gestured wildly to the sweeps of wheat, the lush green that hugged the earth like a comforting blanket. "This land doesn't belong to you," Thomas shot back, feeling his courage grow. "It belongs to me and my family. We tend to it, we nurture it." "Oh, but we will," the bandit said, stepping closer, his eyes narrowing. "Farmers like you get rich while we go hungry. You're living off the sweat of our brows." Every fiber in Thomas's being screamed at him to run, but fear was not the only sentiment that surged within him. Anger, fierce and unyielding, rose like a tide. He challenged, holding his ground. "Have you ever put your hands in the dirt, felt it slip between your fingers? This land is my life." The bandit's laughter faded, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. From behind Thomas, a few of his fellow farmers began to emerge, drawn by the commotion. Their faces, hardened by toil and weather, reflected a mix of fear and determination. They weren't just watching, they were calculating, assessing the situation. "Let's not waste time," the lead bandit barked, impatience flaring. Thomas took a step closer, feeling a surge of warmth cascade through him. "You think you can intimidate us?" His words rang out, fueled by an energy that coursed through the gathered farmers, grounding them in solidarity. Among them, Jacob, an older farmer with years of experience etched in the lines of his face, spoke up. "We might be outnumbered, but we cannot let fear push us down. We fought storms, droughts, and the struggles of life." The bandit's confidence began to waver. "You're just a group of farmers," he spat, trying to mask his fear. "We are a community," Thomas replied, every word resonating like a hammer striking an anvil. For a moment, a tense silence hung in the air, thick enough to cut. The wind whispered through the trees, welcoming his words. The earth beneath their feet seemed to pulse with an ancient strength. Thomas could feel his heart racing, not just for his safety, but for the unknown strength that lay dormant in his neighbors. Then, as if summoned by their resolve, more farmers appeared, drawn by the tension in the air. Word had spread fast, and the ranks began to swell with farmers brandishing rakes, pitchforks, and anything they could find. Unity transformed the scene from an isolated confrontation into a gathering of fierce souls ready to protect their way of life. "Look around you," Thomas said, raising his voice above the murmur of the crowd. "What you see here is not just farmland. It's our history, our families, our identity." The bandits exchanged glances, sensing the shift in momentum. The wind howled gently, wrapping around them, becoming a silent partner to the farmers' cause. They could feel it. The bandits were losing their grip on the situation. A younger farmer, Anna, stepped forward, her face determined, echoing what many felt in their hearts. "You came here thinking you could take advantage of us, but we are not just victims to be pushed aside." The lead bandit, now visibly shaken, took a small step back, his bravado draining away. "You're just farmers," he said, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his bravado. With each word, he struggled to maintain his facade of authority. The fire within him blazed brighter, catching the attention of every neighbor who stood strong beside him. As he surveyed the gathered farmers, Thomas saw their spirits rising, the anxious whispers transforming into shouts of defiance. Something beautiful was happening, a sense of unity, a pulsing heartbeat that grew stronger with every passing moment. They were no longer separated by mere plots of land. They were interwoven with a fierce bond forged through shared hope and tenacity. The lead bandit hesitated, his bravado teetering on the edge. His men began shifting nervously, glancing at one another as uncertainty clouded their collective resolve. As the sun dipped closer to the horizon, Thomas decided to seize the moment. "If you think we'll let you take what is ours without a fight, you're mistaken. This may be our land, but strength doesn't come from weapons." The bandits began to step back, confusion written across their faces. The fear they had once wielded now hung heavy over them, the blade they thought they held tight clattering down as they faltered. "Leave while you can," Thomas implored, his tone shifting from fierce defiance to the calm assurance born from love for his land. "You may have come for violence, but we'll offer you nothing but strength and resolve." The scarred man lowered his head, retreat in his posture becoming clear. He muttered, but the power had shifted. "We will protect this land," Thomas pressed. "You can spread your reign of terror elsewhere." With that, the lead bandit gathered his men, their expressions mixed with disbelief and fear. One by one, they mounted their horses, reluctance tainting their retreat. Thomas watched them, his heart still pounding, but the tide had shifted. As they rode away, something profound settled over the crowd, a breath of fresh air that seemed to whisper of victory. A wave of cheers erupted among the farmers. They had faced the threat together and stood firm in their spirits. Thomas felt an overwhelming flood of pride as he turned to see the faces of his neighbors, shining with newfound light. The fear they had carried transformed into a unifying force, a plea for something greater than just their land. It was a fight for their very lives. "Together, we can face anything," Jacob said, clapping Thomas on the shoulder. His eyes gleamed with respect and admiration. "That was a bold stand, and you inspired us all." Another farmer joined in, nodding with determination. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in colors of celebration and hope, a rich canvas reflecting the spirit of those who had fought to defend their rightful place on this earth. The shadows that had loomed over them cleared, transforming the land once again into a sanctuary of dreams, where together they could thrive and nourish their ambitions. As the stars began to twinkle above, each one a testament to their victory, Thomas took a moment to feel the earth beneath his feet. He was not just a farmer, he was a guardian of dreams, surrounded by a community that would rise up whenever needed. They stood together, not just as individuals but as a collective spirit bound by purpose, ready to cultivate their futures. And as the winds howled softly through the fields, whispering promises of hope, they knew that they had just begun to find their strength, one that would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. The rustle of the wheat field swayed gently in the late afternoon breeze as Thomas knelt in the dusky light, pulling weeds from the rows that had endured countless storms and sunny days alike. The smell of rich earth and sweat filled the air, the familiar scent of hard work and determination. But that tranquility shattered suddenly, a sharp sound breaking through the evening calm. Hooves thundered in the distance, an ominous rhythm that resonated in Thomas's chest. His heart raced as he turned, squinting against the dying sun. In the distance, he saw them dark figures riding hellbent toward him. Panic flooded his thoughts. He had heard the stories. Bandits, marauding thieves, raiding the farms and stealing whatever they could. This was not a tale anymore. It was happening right in front of him. As they drew closer, he noticed the lead rider's menacing posture and the scar etched across his cheek, a mark of a man who had seen and done terrible things, an emblem of his brutality. The other bandits flanked him like vultures, the instinct of conquest gleaming in their eyes. Thomas shouted, feeling a knot tighten in his throat. The moment felt surreal, like a scene out of a nightmare, but he was a farmer, not a coward. He couldn't afford to tremble. He had too much at stake. The lead bandit dismounted with a confidence that dripped with arrogance. "We want what you have, farmer," he drawled, his voice rough like gravel. "Crops, livestock, everything you've worked for. You farmers live too well while people like us suffer." Thomas echoed, his heart pounding. "You think I owe you anything? My family has worked this land for generations." Laughter erupted from the other bandits, hollow and mocking. Thomas felt the pulse of adrenaline surge through him, each heartbeat fueling his resolve. He planted his feet firmly, gripping his pitchfork like a sword in front of him. "You'll find no easy victory here." The bandit's smile faltered for a moment, clearly not used to being defied. "You're just one man." "It's not just me," Thomas said, stepping slightly forward, the earth steady beneath him. "You underestimate the heart of a farmer. We don't back down." Around him, he could feel a change. The stillness of fear began to crack as other farmers emerged from their fields, drawn by the commotion. Faces that had shared toil and sweat were now united by something much deeper. Familiar glances exchanged shared resolve, a collective spirit galvanizing them. Jacob, a fellow farmer with decades of wisdom etched in his face, stepped forward. "We've encountered thieves before." The bandits exchanged uncertain glances. For a moment, they had expected easy prey, but a band of determined farmers could turn into a growing rebellion. The lead bandit's confidence began to waver. "You think you can rally your fellow farmers against us?" "Our crops are our livelihood," Thomas responded, voice steady as the ground beneath him. "And when you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us." His vision swept over his neighbors as they stepped forward, arms braced and fists clenched. It was an electrifying sight, the embodiment of resilience and shared purpose. Thomas felt the bond of their community fortifying his conviction. He knew they could achieve something greater than any individual could alone. The weight of the bandit's arrogant sneer began to fade as uncertainty took root. "This isn't over," he spat, his bravado cracking under the pressure. "You think this is some sort of story? You can ride away today, but know that you will find no welcome here," Thomas warned, his voice echoing like a battle cry. "We will stand our ground." As the horsemen retreated into the distance, Thomas felt a vibrant energy surge among his fellow farmers. With fierce determination, they stood shoulder to shoulder, hearts racing, palms sweaty yet resolute. They had faced not just bandits in that moment, but the reality of their struggles, a struggle that ran deep in the rich soil they nurtured. "Thomas," Jacob said, placing a hand on his shoulder, "you ignited something in us today." "We won't just defend what's ours," Thomas replied, his voice raw but strong. "We'll gather more farmers, we'll build alliances." In the days that followed, townsfolk began to come together, sharing stories and meals, passing plans around campfires under the starlit sky. People spoke of bandits, yes, but they also spoke of hope, the promise of tomorrow, and the bonds of community growing stronger than ever. They were no longer a collection of individuals. They were a force united, a tide of resilience ready to protect what belonged to them. Thomas felt the power of grassroots gathering around him, their voices merging into a symphony of defiance. Reports of bandit sightings sprinkled across the land, a reminder that life was tenuous, fragile in its beauty, yet vibrant in its fight. And it was during one of these gatherings under the moonlit sky that a plan began to form. "Let's prepare," Thomas said, linking arms with his friends. "We'll set traps in the fields, we'll hide our livestock." As word spread of their preparations, the townsfolk began to contribute in ways they hadn't expected. Children scoured the woods for old tools, neighbors shared food and supplies, and elders passed down knowledge of their ancestors' struggles and victories. The bandits would soon face not just farmers, but a community equipped with a heart and history. Not long after, as the sun dipped again, painting the landscape in hues of orange and purple, the familiar sound of hooves returned. But this time, Thomas and his fellow farmers were ready. Every person stood shoulder to shoulder, their eyes fixed with fierce resolve. When the bandits emerged from the trees, they were met not with fear, but with a wall of determination. Thomas stepped forward again. Bound by his community, he felt the strength of their unity wash over him. "It's not your land, and it never will be," he shouted, defiance pouring from him. His voice echoed against the evening sky, transforming every statement into a collective shout of unity. The bandit leader looked shocked. Anna, a young farmer who had joined in their fight, waved a pitchfork high above her head, breaking the air with exhilaration. "We refuse to let you have our home." The shifting weight of the bandits' confidence crumbled further, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. They were not just facing a single farmer anymore. They confronted an army of neighbors, united in their commitment to their land. Thomas roared, every word a rallying cry mingling with the shadows around him. "Look around." The bandits, sensing defeat, began to back away, their bravado swept away by the tide of unity that loomed before them. They turned their horses, confusion mingling with fear as they retreated once more into the trees, realizing they had underestimated the spirit of the people who tilled the land. Victory erupted in a chorus of cheers, raucous and loud, warmth spreading through every participant as they celebrated their newfound resolve. Despite the danger that loomed, the farmers had transformed from prey to prevailing spirit, protecting their land against the odds. Thomas stood among them, pride swelling within him, seeing neighbors united by shared purpose and relentless hope. That night, they gathered to celebrate not just their victory, but the bond that had strengthened in the face of darkness. The laughter of children danced through the air, harmonizing with the heartfelt camaraderie that enveloped them. But deep down, Thomas understood. The fight was far from finished. Threats might always lurk on the fringes, but together, they had forged a community that would weather any storm. As he looked at the faces illuminated by flickering firelight, he felt a surge of gratitude. They were family forged in resolve and unity, a collective spirit unyielding and real. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it together, standing firm and strong against every challenge life dared to throw their way. And as the stars twinkled above, A silent promise settled among them. This land, this life would always be theirs to protect. Together, stronger than ever, they would defend their home and maintain the legacy they built with love, sweat, and indomitable spirit. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields of golden wheat. Thomas, a humble farmer in his 40s, was bent low, tending to his crops with care. All around him, the world seemed alive with the sounds of nature. Birds chirped, the wind whispered through the grass, and bees hummed a serene backdrop to his daily toil. But as he worked, an unsettling noise broke through the harmony of the countryside. Distant hoofbeats drummed against the earth, gradually increasing in volume. Thomas paused, a chill creeping up his spine. In this land, those sounds had come to symbolize something dark, something menacing. He straightened up, squinting into the distance. Dust clouds rose, swirling like a cyclone, and there they were, a group of riders, their figures dark against the amber sky. Bandits. His heart raced. He had heard stories, the kind that made your skin crawl. Tales of families torn apart, crops stolen, and homes burned. Yet in that moment, it was more than just rumors. It was happening right before his eyes. The lead rider, a man with a scar that ran across his cheek, dismounted with an unsettling swagger. He surveyed the fields, a cruel smile creeping across his lips. He taunted. Thomas swallowed hard but found the strength to stand firm, gripping his pitchfork like a sword. "This land doesn't belong to you." The bandit laughed, the sound echoing in the stillness. "And who's going to stop me?" "I will," Thomas replied, his voice steady despite the storm brewing in his chest. Behind him, the echo of footsteps drew nearer as other farmers emerged from the nearby fields. Faces of determination were painted against the fading sunlight, their bodies forming a wall of solidarity. Jacob, an old friend and fellow farmer, stepped forward. "You'll find no easy prey here," he called out, raising a pitchfork of his own. The lead bandit's expression faltered for a moment, a flicker of uncertainty passing across his eyes, but it was quickly masked by anger. "You think you can challenge us?" Thomas felt adrenaline surge through him. Fear and anger fused into a fire that ignited in his belly. "We're not just farmers, we're a community. We work hard and we protect what is ours." The bandits hesitated, their bravado slowly dissipating as they took in the scene. The group of farmers, men and women, shoulders squared, resolved to stand together against the menace, was more than just a collection of individuals. It was a united front. The lead bandit stepped closer, trying to regain control of the situation. "You think you can scare us off with some speeches? We've taken from stronger men than you," he sneered. But Thomas pressed on, his heart pounding in time with the rhythm of the tension that rose between them. "You'll have to do more than scare me. I've faced the storms, the droughts." At that moment, Thomas could feel the weight of his ancestors, farmers, fathers, and mothers who had fought for their land before him. He remembered stories passed down around the fire, tales of grit and bravery, and how love for one's home could forge an unbreakable spirit. Those stories echoed in his heart now, fueling his courage. "You're delusional if you think we're just going to walk away," the bandit snarled. "Next time you might find more than just farmers standing in your way," Thomas warned, his voice rising. The bandits exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping into their ranks. It was palpable. They had come expecting weaklings, men and women afraid to fight back. But they were met with something unexpected, a fierce loyalty, a legacy of resistance born from the land itself. "But you're outnumbered," the bandit pressed, trying to regain the upper hand. Thomas surveyed the men and women behind him, neighbors and friends, all ready to defend their way of life. "We may be outnumbered, but we are united." With the wave of a hand, he gestured for the farmers to step forward to take their stand. Hope surged as they gathered behind him in solidarity, an unwavering force against the encroaching darkness. Each face told a story of sacrifice. Each pair of hands that gripped tools reflected the hard work and love poured into the land. And for the first time, the bandits began to show signs of retreat. Their arrogance wavered, fear creeping in like an unwelcome guest. "You're making a mistake," the lead bandit muttered, clenching his jaw. "No," Thomas countered, heart racing. And then it happened. Without a word, Thomas raised his pitchfork, a symbol of defiance, and the farmers behind him followed suit. It was a powerful sight, unified, unyielding. Together they stood, an impenetrable wall of strength that seemed to echo through the fields. The lead bandit finally stepped back, uncertainty shrouding his once confident demeanor. "You'll regret this," he said, barely disguising the tremor in his voice. "We're not afraid of you," Jacob shouted, voice resonating throughout the dusk. As the bandits mounted their horses, adrenaline surged through Thomas. They had defended their land, their legacy, and their way of life. For this moment they had turned the tide. The bandits retreated, slowly fading into the dusk, and as they disappeared, a wave of energy washed over the farmers. Cheers erupted, voices rising in celebration, echoing across the fields. Someone shouted, a grin spreading across their face. Others chimed in, laughter mingling with the twilight, filling the air with a joyous fervor. Thomas felt a swell of pride as they high-fived and hugged each other, rejoicing in the victory. But standing amidst the revelry, there was something deeper too. Each farmer felt the weight of what they had accomplished, how their collective strength had turned fear into power, turning vulnerability into resilience. Yet, despite their victory, Thomas knew that this was not the end. The bandits would come again and they would need to be prepared. "We shouldn't let our guard down," he called out, raising his hand to quiet the cheers. "We need a plan." As the night deepened, the farmers gathered, discussing what to do next, sharing ideas and recalling lessons from the elders. They spoke of traps to set, of ways to fortify their homes, of call and response to alert each other should danger arise again. With each voice that rose, a sense of purpose washed over them. They didn't just talk of defending their land. They spoke of creating a community that would be a beacon of hope. They would reflect mutual support, understanding that their bond was stronger than any threat. In the days that followed, they worked tirelessly. The farmers pooled their resources, digging trenches and building barricades. They taught each other how to hunt, fish, and gather, ensuring that even if food became scarce, they'd still find ways to survive. As they toiled under the hot sun, Thomas often shared his vision of what they could become. Imagine a village united, not just surviving but thriving. People began to believe in a shared future, not merely fighting against the bandits but building something greater, a community where every farmer was a protector, every family, a vital thread woven into the fabric of this land. The camaraderie deepened as they broke bread together, celebrated small victories, and tended to their crops as one. The fields grew greener, richer under their care, and the laughter of children floated across the expanse, intertwining with the fragrance of the earth. But the unsettling feeling that the bandits would return nagged at Thomas. Days turned into weeks, and the peace that fell over the community felt fragile, like a summer storm brewing on the horizon, a sweet promise of rain but with dark clouds lurking ominously above. And then one evening, as a gentle fog settled across the fields, the sound of hooves once again echoed in the distance. Thomas's heart dropped as the bandits appeared on the horizon, their figures illuminated against the twilight. This time, though, the farmers were ready. Weapons were grabbed, the makeshift barricades poised to protect what was theirs. The air hung thick with electricity, the kind that rumbles just before a storm. The farmers gathered once more, hearts beating in rhythm. As the lead bandit approached, confidence seemed to seep back into his being. "You thought you could escape us," he sneered, voice dripping with disdain. "Bring it on," Thomas challenged, stepping forward as anger mixed with determination coursed through him. "You may have come here to threaten us again, but I'll remind you once more, this is our land, our home." A tense silence hung in the air. The farmers, hearts pounding, stood their ground like an unyielding wall. They would not let the weight of fear either consume them or dictate the course of their lives. The lead bandit's bravado fell flat, and for the first time, Thomas saw a flicker of doubt ripple through his eyes. Thomas took a slow breath, letting the wind swirl around him. "You can leave now, but don't mistake our kindness for weakness." The bandit's gaze shifted, and he glanced back at his men. They were wavering, caught between the promise of danger and the resolute spirit of the farmers. In that charged moment, the air crackled with possibilities. Thomas felt a sudden surge, the unity of those behind him pulsing like a heartbeat, a chosen family ready to protect their legacy. As the lead bandit hesitated, Thomas spoke louder, his voice reverberating across the fields. "Why do you choose this life of fear? You can join us, be a part of something bigger than anger and stealing. The farmers stood behind him, solidarity flowing through them, chanting their unity like a mantra. Together. The bandits shifted again and the tide began to turn. Their enemy wasn't just a farmer anymore. It was a wave of hope, a community they could not conquer, fortified by everything they cherished. The lead bandit, the man who'd once seemed invincible, looked shaken. His men started to break ranks, glancing at each other, uncertain. "We won't chase you away, but we won't put up with your threats," Thomas said, his voice ringing clear. "Take this chance. Leave now and we won't hold it against you." The lead bandit's face contorted, trying to mask his humiliation. "You'll regret this," he finally spat, turning his horse around. The sound of hooves retreating filled the air. Cheers erupted from the farmers, echoing across the fields. They had faced the threat together, a united people against those who sought to divide them. Thomas felt tears stinging his eyes, not just from fear, but from the overwhelming joy of victory. But this was just the beginning. They had defended their home, and from that day on, every farmer vowed to uphold their promise, to nurture the land, inspire each other, and protect the community they had forged. As dusk settled in, the farmers gathered around the fires, recounting stories of bravery, celebrating their strength. With every laugh that resonated in the night air, Thomas felt the bonds tight, weaving a protective layer around their hearts and their homes. In that warm glow, with the flickering flames illuminating their faces, they shared more than just meals. They shared hope, resilience, and the spirit of defiance that could not be broken. They had found something greater than themselves, a family forged together in the heat of battle, forever linked through love for their land. And as stars twinkled overhead, shimmering like promises, Thomas knew that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in purpose and unwavering in resolve, standing firm against any storm the world dared to bring. The sun hung low in the autumn sky, casting a warm, golden light across the fields. Thomas was bent over, his hands deep in the earth, pulling weeds from the rich soil of his farm. Every day was a battle, but the fruits of his labor were a testament to his relentless spirit. He loved this land, the way it felt beneath his fingertips, the way it provided for his family. But that peaceful rhythm was about to be shattered. In the distance, he heard its hoofbeats. At first, it was just a faint thud like the drumming of distant thunder. But as it grew louder, so did the primal instinct to survive. Thomas straightened up and squinted into the distance, his heart racing. Dust rose as dark figures emerged, galloping toward him. Bandits. His worst fears had come to life. Stories of roving gangs had spread like wildfire, tales filled with violence and terror. Families shattered, homes ransacked. Thomas never thought it would happen to him. But here they come, a pack of wolves ready to claim their territory. As the bandits drew nearer, the sharpness of his instincts kicked in. The lead rider, a man with a jagged scar slashing across his cheek, exuded menace. He dismounted with a confidence that screamed arrogance. Thomas's heart raced, but he wouldn't show fear. His grip tightened around the handle of his pitchfork, the only weapon he had against this gathering storm. Thomas called out, trying to sound braver than he felt. The bandit leader laughed, a low, cruel sound that sent a chill down Thomas's spine. "We want what's yours, farmer. Your crops, your livestock, everything you've worked for." The gravity of the accusation hit Thomas hard. He shouted, the anger surging through him like a fire igniting. "This land has fed my family for generations." A smirk flickered across the bandit's face, but Thomas could see it, the hesitation, the uncertainty beneath that bravado. The air thickened as he felt the weight of the earth beneath his feet, reminding him of the battles his ancestors had fought to keep their land. He took a step forward, pitchfork raised, but his heart pounded louder. The bandits didn't expect this. "Just one man," the scarred leader sneered, spreading his arms wide as if to encompass his crew behind him. The rhythmic thundering of hooves grew quieter as other farmers emerged from the fields. Faces that had endured sweat and toil mirrored the unyielding resolve Thomas felt surging through him. Each person who stepped forward added another layer of strength to the growing wall of defiance. "Looks like the coward has friends," the bandit taunted, eyeing the farmers like they were mere obstacles in his path. But Thomas saw the fear drain from the faces around him, replaced by a collective spirit of determination. Jacob, an older farmer with years of experience etched in the lines of his face, stepped forward too. With a ripple of courage, the other farmers stood shoulder to shoulder, their resolve growing stronger by the second. Thomas felt the warmth of determination spreading through the group. They had shared everything, the joy of fertile harvests, the pain of droughts, the tears of loss, and now that bond was a living force, breathing fire into their hearts. "Go back to wherever you came from," Thomas called out, his voice steady. "We won't let you take our home." The scarred man's laughter rang hollow as he glanced at his fellow bandits. "You think you can intimidate us with some noisy farmers?" "No," Thomas challenged, stepping even closer. For a moment, the tension hung heavy in the air. It was an electric charge, the kind that comes before a storm. The bandits shifted uncomfortably, the confidence of the leader faltering under the weight of determination radiating from Thomas and his neighbors. "We'll have what we want, even if we have to take it by force," the bandit snapped, frustration twisting his features. "Your threats mean nothing here," Jacob said, raising his voice. "We've faced greater challenges than you. We've fought for our homes, worked through thin and thick." The bandit eyed the gathered farmers, confusion flickering in his eyes. Their faces were resolute, unyielding, ready to stand firm in the face of menace. The whispers of doubt started seeping into his bravado. Behind him, some of his men shifted uneasily, glancing at one another as uncertainty seeped in. "Leave now," Thomas urged, voice complete with conviction, "and never come back." The leader's jaw clenched as he scanned the gathering. It was more than just a group of farmers. It was a family, a community, and they were ready to fight. He spat, yet the bravado was slowly leaking away like water through a sieve. "We may not have swords, but we have each other," Thomas responded, lifting his chin defiantly. As the words left his lips, the energy shifted. The bandits were caught in the tide of a storm, one they had not foreseen, and in that moment, something incredible happened. The bandit leader took a step back, uncertainty written all over his face. With a final defiant roar from the farmers, the wind began to howl, echoing their unity. It was a call to arms, not just against these bandits, but against every fear that had ever threatened their lives and homes. The bandit leader shouted, turning to his men, "We retreat, but we'll remember this day, farmers." And with that, the bandits turned, retreating into the shadows from which they had come. Thomas felt the cheers erupt behind him, the relief flooding through the gathered farmers as they shouted and celebrated their victory. It was a moment of triumph, but more than that, it was a moment that solidified their bonds forever. But as the cheers echoed, Thomas couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this was not the end. They had made it clear they were not to be trifled with, but he knew bandits seldom give up. They always return, driven by greed or revenge, and he had to prepare for the inevitable. In the following days, life on the farm continued, but there was a tangible shift in the air. The farmers called for meetings under the sprawling oak tree on the hill, a place that had seen countless tales of hope and struggle. With each gathering, they spoke of what had happened, their hearts still racing from the adrenaline of the confrontation. "We can't let our guard down," Thomas said, his voice steady, but determination burned in his eyes. "Next time we'll need a plan." What came next was nothing short of extraordinary. The farmers began to train together. They shared knowledge passed down through generations, how to make rudimentary traps, strategies for defense, working together to fortify their homes against whatever threats lay ahead. It transformed the air, charged with camaraderie, laughter, and relentless hope. Children joined in the training, adults gathered in groups, and the days transformed into weeks of unity and preparation. Thomas watched as hearts united in a common goal, turning fear into lessons learned, creating a community bound by resilience. Then one fateful evening, as the sun dipped low, they noticed a cloud of dust rising in the distance. The unmistakable sound of hoofbeats resonated again. This time, however, it felt different, like the calm before a storm. The farmers stood shoulder to shoulder, fortified and ready. As the bandits appeared, a sense of familiarity washed over them, but this time, Thomas's heart didn't race with fear. It burned with anticipation, mixed with ironclad resolve. The lead bandit laughed when he saw them, a cruel grin splitting his face. "You thought you could frighten us off. You'll regret this," he spat, trying to muster whatever bravado he still had. It was Thomas who stepped forward first, his grip firm on his pitchfork, and behind him stood the collective spirit of everyone he knew. The bandit taunted, yet uncertainty flickered in his eyes. In that electric moment, Thomas took a breath and called out, "We're not just farmers anymore. We've become a fortress built on unity." The farmers raised their tools in response, not as weapons of violence but as symbols of their undying resolve. The tide had shifted. The sound of clattering hooves met the unwavering stance of those who had chosen hope over fear. The bandits hesitated, uncertainty dimming their confidence. The very land they thought would yield easy spoils stood resolute, and the people fighting for it were fiercer than they had anticipated. Thomas shouted, voice echoing in the dusk. The bandit leader's face twisted in disbelief, yet amid the tension, there was a glimmer of recognition. He understood that today was not just about taking. It was a battle against survival, against people who would not let their legacy be snuffed out. With a nod, the bandit turned, signaling for his gang to retreat once more, their arrogance stripped away. As they rode away into the dusk, a cheer broke from the farmers, a roar of victory that echoed across the land. But amidst the celebration, Thomas felt something deeper, a thread of connection, reminding him that their fight wasn't merely about food or land. It was a battle for identity, for community, for the love passed through countless generations. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, the camaraderie filled the air with warmth. They shared laughter, stories, and renewed vows. Their past struggles transformed into lessons that knitted them closer together, creating a tapestry woven from courage, honor, and resilience. In that moment, Thomas realized they had forged something far greater than just a defense against bandits. They had become a family, intertwined in their fight for survival. They stood firm, unyielding in the face of challenges, knowing they were united by purpose. As the night wrapped around them, the whispers of hope filled the cool air, solidifying a promise that whatever came next, they would face it together, their hearts beating in unison, always standing firm against any storm that dared to approach. The sun dipped low, casting a warm glow over the sprawling fields, but there was a chill in the air, a sense of unease lingering just beyond the horizon. Thomas knelt in the dirt, his hands working the soil as he could feel the pulse of the land beneath him. The wheat stood tall and golden, swaying gently in the afternoon breeze, reassuring him of the season's bounty. This land was his life, the embodiment of sweat and toil, and he cherished every inch of it. But today, that peace was about to be shattered. A distant rumble broke through the serenity, a sound growing closer and closer, resonating like thunder. Thomas paused, heart racing, a cold grip of fear wrapping around him. Hooves, the unmistakable sound of riders galloping fast, and in that moment dread settled heavy on his chest. As he straightened, squinting into the distance, dark figures emerged from the haze, kicking up clouds of dust, their outlines sharp against the fading sun. Bandits. News had spread throughout the valley of their treachery, tales of families ripped apart, homes ransacked, and lives shattered. He had never expected this moment to come for him, for his land. But the bandits were real, and they were coming for what was his. The lead rider, a man with a scar slicing through his cheek, reined in his horse with a flourish, dismounting with the ease of someone who was used to getting what he wanted. A cruel smile stretched across his face as he surveyed the land, eyes glinting with malice. Thomas's heart pounded in his chest. He gripped his pitchfork tightly, the rusted handle firm in his hand. He would not let fear consume him. Thomas shouted, voice steady despite the tremor of adrenaline coursing through him. The bandit laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that sent shivers through the air. "We want what's yours, farmer. Your crops, your livestock. We've heard of your riches." The words dripped from his mouth like poison, a threat veiled in arrogance. Thomas's voice rang out, echoing stronger than he felt. "You can't just take what doesn't belong to you." The bandit's face twisted into a sneer, and he took a step closer, clearly relishing the intimidation. "And who is going to stop me? You." Thomas echoed, a fire igniting within him. He squared his shoulders, feeling an energy ripple through him. This land was more than just dirt and crops. It was his family's legacy, a history steeped in resilience and hard work. The whispers of his ancestors filled his ears, urging him forward. Just then, in the distance, other farmers began to emerge. faces worn from years of labor but determined and fierce. They were neighbors, people who understood the stakes. Thomas felt a surge of strength as they gathered behind him, forming an impenetrable wall of resolve. "Looks like you found some friends," the bandit leader scoffed, casting a dismissive glance. "We're not afraid of you," Jacob, an older farmer, stepped forward, his voice steady and clear. "We've weathered storms and droughts." The bandits shifted uneasily, for the first time sensing that they were facing more than just a single farmer. The unity of the community, the strength forged in shared struggles, began to intimidate them. "Now you're making a big mistake, old man," the bandit replied, trying to recover his composure. "You think you can fight us, but you've never faced a united front," Thomas shot back, the courage filling him like wildfire. "We are one." The air crackled with tension, every heartbeat echoing like a war drum as Thomas held his ground, his pitchfork raised high. Behind him, his fellow farmers mirrored his defiance, their tools at the ready. Their spirits soared, interwoven like the crops that surrounded them, fortified by a history of hard work and camaraderie. The bandit leader's bravado faltered. He stepped back, a flicker of doubt crossing his face, but anger flared in his eyes. "No," Thomas replied steadily, "but we can fight for our land, for our lives." The bandits began to shift nervously, glancing at one another, clearly unsure of their next move. The unseen power of hope and resilience surged between the farmers, igniting conviction that none of them had expected to feel. "Go back to whatever hole you crawled from," Jacob demanded, his voice a whip crack in the growing silence. The tension hung thick in the air, the weight of impending conflict palpable. The bandits took a small step back, confusion painted across their faces. They had come expecting easy prey men and women afraid to stand, but they found strength in unity. The lead bandit clenched his jaw, embarrassment creeping into his demeanor. "You won't get away with this," he spat, the bravado dwindling. He turned to his men, who shifted uncertainly on their horses. Before they could respond, Thomas stepped forward one last time, determination swirling in his chest. The lead bandit hesitated, eyeing Thomas and the growing crowd behind him. For the first time, he felt the weight of the farmers resolve the strength that lay in unity. With an exasperated growl, he jerked his head, signaling the retreat. As the bandits turned and rode away, a cheer exploded from the farmers, relief washing over them like rain on parched earth. They had stood firm. They had defended their land and their pride. But Thomas knew this wasn't the end. As the adrenaline faded, the truth settled in: bandits rarely gave up, and deeper issues had only begun to stir. The reality of their victory loomed over him, but he couldn't shake off the sense of vulnerability. The days rolled on, yet the tension never quite dissipated. The farmers employed both vigilance and caution, fortifying their homes against potential attacks. When they gathered, the conversations turned serious, filled with earnest discussions of strategy and community defense. "We can't just hope they don't return," Jacob said one evening as they sat around a flickering fire, the stars twinkling above like eyes watching over them. "We need to be proactive." Thomas nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. "We'll train together. We need to be alert, learn everything we can about our enemies." As they planned, the bond between the farmers tightened, friendships forged deeper than the roots of the crops they tended. But even so, fear lingered beneath the surface. Then one night, as clouds rolled in and darkness swallowed the horizon, the tension broke, rattling the country air. The farmers had gathered for a meeting, voices hushed, shadows shifting around the dim light of the flickering lanterns. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the field, a terrifying sound that sent ripples of fear through the group. Anna, one of the younger farmers, whispered, her eyes wide with alarm. Thomas's heart raced as he rushed outside, the fresh scent of rain heavy in the air. He turned just in time to see the flicker of movement in the shadows. A group of figures emerged, bandits, their faces hidden, preparing to storm into their community. Back inside, Thomas shouted, adrenaline coursing through him as the farmers scrambled for safety. But it was too late. With a fierce battle cry, the bandits charged, and the unsuspecting farmers found themselves caught off guard. The night erupted into chaos, filled with shouts and the clamor of footsteps. In that moment, everything Thomas had built, the hope, the strength, the promise of unity, was thrown into the abyss. Faced with an overwhelming wave of attackers, he felt a deep pit of despair settle in his stomach. Then, through the crashing sounds of chaos, a single thought surged through his mind. He could not let this be the end. He could not let fear overwrite their courage. He yelled, gripping his pitchfork tightly and meeting the first bandit head-on. They locked eyes for an instant, and in Thomas's gaze was the fire of determination, a relentless spirit that refused to yield. As the battle cries filled the air, the farmers rallied like never before, drawn into the whirlwind of defense. What unfolded was more than just a physical struggle. It was a fight for identity, a battle to protect not just the land, but the very essence of who they were. And in the heat of conflict, amid flying fists and shouts, a single question loomed over the horizon. Would they stand firm against the storm? With each clash that echoed through the night, the resolution deepened. This was their moment to either forge their legacy or watch it crumble. The answer remained to be seen, and as chaos unfolded around him, Thomas steeled himself for the fight of his life, intent on defending not just his farm, but the heart and soul of the community entwined with it. The night felt heavy with danger, but hope flickered like a candle, ready to ignite the darkness.